It's Diana. About to talk about a very spooky book, Dracula. Welcome to the intersection of food and literature. This is the episode where I talk about the story. This is Bram Stoker's Dracula. So before I talk about that, this is an epistolary story. I'm hoping I pronounced that right, because when I pronounce it wrong, it's okay. Which means the whole thing is letters and diary entries and that kind of thing. It's never people speaking to each other and then a description of what you get, description and you get dialogue, but it's as reported by a person. And there are different people who write in their diaries or write reports. One's the doctor, and so his are kind of like medical notes. Then there's Jonathan Harker, and then later his wife, Mina Harker. She's in the story, but she becomes his wife. Van Helsing. And there's a couple of times by other people, but those are the main ones. Dracula never writes in a diary. Okay, that's kind of funny. So we never hear from Dracula from his own point of view. This is very much a story where Dracula is the bad guy. We don't have sympathy for him. We don't think he's just misunderstood. We don't even think he's sexy. That comes later in literature. No, he is just a bad guy who's going around literally sucking the life out of people. So for this, I'm going to also say this. I love this book. I refuse to unlove this book. The first time I read it, I was riveted. Would not stop reading, just the whole thing. Totally suspended disbelief. I'm all in. This time when I read it, I had to work a little harder. But I'm going to say this, that a book that the story is so good that the holes in the writing can be ignored, that's a story worth reading. I don't know if it's, well, this just is poorly written, or if it's old, it's a little outdated and I'm not used to this style anymore. Whichever way, it can be off-putting. I think it's a great story. Part of the, I'm going to say the main suspense comes from dramatic irony. As the reader of the book, we know a lot more than the characters do. And sometimes the characters are a little dumb. Let's run through Dracula. It starts off with Jonathan Harker going to Dracula's castle. So he's going through Transylvania, and you can hear something, you might hear some things and go, oh, how cliche. But this is the very beginning. This is not the first vampire book, but it's really at the beginning. So yes, they go to Transylvania. He has a castle, and Jonathan Harker is going to be assist him in business. He's like his legal business lawyer. Doesn't know that Dracula is a Dracula. He's just Count Dracula. That's his title. Doesn't know he's a vampire. And the people that he keeps encountering are trying to warn him, but he doesn't listen. When he gets there, things get a little suspicious and more horrifying, and he realizes at some point that he's trapped and he's not supposed to leave alive. He does leave alive through some daring, and then there's another portion of the story. So we have these parts coming together. This used to be one of my favorite elements of a story, where it has different parts and they converge. So it doesn't have a huge amount of parts, but it does have some that converge. What Dracula's aim is to come from Transylvania, where there are not that many people, to London, where there's a bunch of people he can suck on. He gets there, and Lucy, who happens to be Mina's friend, becomes one of his first victims. She's certainly the victim we know about because of the diaries and the letters. Oh, sometimes there's like a newspaper article. And also at the same time, converging, is Dr. Seward. And he is the person who runs a mental asylum. One of the patients there, Renfield, is a little bizarre. He's the only patient that Dr. Seward talks about. Bizarre in that he keeps eating things that are disgusting, like flies. He starts out with flies. Then he realizes if he gets a spider and the spider eats a bunch of flies and then he eats the spider, he has consumed that many more lives. And he moves up. And he wants a bird. I think he eats his birds. He asks for a cat. He never gets the cat. I was glad about that. I was already sad about the bird. And he becomes a barometer almost for what Dracula is doing. We're coming together. Lucy starts dying. They don't know why she's dying. We know why she's dying. And Van Helsing gets called in by the doctor. He's been used as a character in other things as this great hunter of vampires because he's the one who seems to have all the knowledge. And he brings in the garlic, though the garlic is in flourish form. It's not the actual bulb like we eat in our food. He brings in the whole stake through the heart. He does cut off the head. So he's got he does the host, the communion wafer. Does he do holy water? I don't think he does holy water. Interesting. But he's the one who does, they do have crucifix like around their necks and stuff. And Jonathan is brought in because of his wife, Mina, who knows Lucy, and we start having people coming together. Lucy also happens to be engaged to a lord, and there were two other men who also proposed to her. One, his name is Quincy. He's an American cowboy. What makes a vampire story better than an American cowboy? That's what. And then the doctor himself. So we have all these connections and they come together. The hunt, after Lucy, they lose the battle for Lucy's life. She dies. She becomes a vampire. And that's the first disposing of the vampire that we see. They cut her head off, all that stuff. And it's a release of her soul, so it's seen as a good thing. Besides the fact that she'll stop hunting children. Her main source seems to be children. Though she doesn't kill them yet. She hasn't gotten to that point. Oh, since we're talking about children, Dracula, he's got three, do they call them sisters? They're three female vampires in his castle. And he'll, every now and then, they don't seem to leave much, but he'll bring them a sack, throw it to them, and he'll have a child in it. Pretty grisly. Oh, also the idea that the vampire he can't cross water except at low tide. And he can't, like if he's on a boat, he can't get off the boat until low tide. Sleeps during the day, needs, I don't know if he sleeps in a coffin, but he has to sleep on like this, it's almost like holy dirt. He's found in a lot of old chapels. And once they put the host on it, he can't go back. What else? I'm trying to think of the cliche. I just had it. He turns into a bat. Oh, he cannot enter into a domicile, or maybe it's any building, unless he's first invited. But once he's invited, he can come and go as he pleases. So this is all part of the dramatic irony. They've already watched Lucy be drained of her blood and finally die, and they don't see it happening to Mina. Even they just like, let's protect the woman, and we're not going to share information with her anymore. We'll just send her off to bed, which is really convenient because then Dracula can visit her and drain her. He gains access through Renfield. Of course he does, because Renfield first begged, please let me go, doctor, please let me go, because he can't just leave. He's in an insane asylum. Please let me go. I promise, can't tell him why. I cannot tell you why, but I promise You will feel better if you do. Because he knows that Dracula is going to ask him to give him permission to enter, and that Mina is in danger. So they don't see Dracula now draining Mina. They are, the men, they is the doctor, Jonathan Harker, Van Helsing, Quincy, and Lord Golding. I think his name is Golding, the Lord who was Lucy's fiance. They are all hunting because Dracula sent over not only himself, but 50 large boxes of earth that are like his home dirt, his home turf. And if the dirt is there, he can be there. So he's spreading these out around London. That's the plan. But most of them are in one or two places. So they're trying to find, the men, are trying to find all of these things of dirt so that they can put the communion wafer in it, and Dracula can't use it anymore. And it's working, but while they're doing that, he's getting Mina. And he cuts his own chest, and he sticks her face onto his chest and makes her drink his blood, which was really her blood, because so there's this recycled blood thing, which is really interesting. Also, I'm just going to say taints. It taints the idea of nursing, which is life-giving, and this is life-taking. He now has control of her, and she didn't say, yes, please take my soul, but apparently now she's on the path to becoming a vampire, and God has forsaken her. She also cannot go near the communion wafer or have a crucifix on her. But can be sad about it. So she's sad, like, oh, I'm awful. I've been scarred. Somebody, I forgot which one, probably Van Helsing, puts the communion wafer on her forehead and it burns a scar. And she's marked. Dracula goes back to Transylvania. We have gone around in a circle. We're back at the beginning, and Van Helsing kills the 3 women vampires, or undeads their deadness. But the young dudes, Harking, Seward, the doctor is Seward, Golding, and Quincy, are after the boat that's bringing Dracula up the river, and they get him. And right at the end, he's like, because it's daytime, and he gets a smile on his face because he can see the sun going down, and they kill him. In this story, where one might think there's going to be a plethora of opportunities to eat, very little to no food again. They eat, and they'll say stuff like, we must eat breakfast to preserve our strength, or so that because we got to be strong for the fight. So it's not that they don't eat, it's just that there's no details about the eating, except for Renfield eating flies and spiders, and a bird probably, and the vampires eating the blood. Well, I'm not going to eat blood. I know there are things like blood pudding. I'm not interested. No, thank you. And I really am not going to eat flies or spiders, and I'm not even going to go kill a songbird and eat that. No, none of those are interesting to me. So what I am going to do, and I think it's a good choice, the food that does show up is brandy, and it's used medicinally. Like, oh, Lucy is about to die because of all the blood she has lost. Run and get some brandy. And they get the brandy and they put it on her gums. I don't know why, but they do. And that's done several times. And it's interesting. It's a good choice, I think, too, because blood is imbibed, is drank, and brandy is drank. So I'm going to do brandy. I don't drink brandy. This is going to be interesting. Kind of like the gin. I don't know anything about it. Let's do it. Thank y'all for joining me in my darkened laundry room, which I don't know if it'll work. Ooh, oh, I like it. Yeah, I like it. Look at my glasses. That's funny. Ooh, okay. For a run through the story of Dracula, it is, even if you think, okay, you told me the whole story, why, I think it's absolutely worth reading. Like I said, I've done it more than once. I've read it more than once. So of course I think it's worth reading. See y'all next time.